Yes po.
Yes po.
Thank you
Okay,
po.
so once again, good morning everyone. So this time our topic is a more interesting one because this will be a strategic human resource management. No? So business objectives are achieved when human resource practices, procedures, and system are developed and implemented based on organizational needs. That is when a strategic perspective to human resource management is adopted. No? The purpose of this discussion is to begin with the overview of the concept of human resource management and strategic management, which serve as a foundation of strategic human resource management, and then goes over a definition of strategic human resource management and some example of it. No, the resources-based view and strategic fit, and a description of how long or how a strategic human resource work, namely the universalistic, contingency, and configurational perspective. No? And the three approaches associated with those perspectives, the best practices, best fit, and bundling. No? This discussion will discuss the reality of strategic human resource management and the practical implications of the theories review of our presenters. Okay, so take it away, presenter.
Dean. We're not really sure if this is aligned with what you just said, but this is the content of our report, Human Resource Management Process, Competency-Based Human Resource Management, Knowledge Performance, and High Performance Work Systems. This is what we prepared for today. Are we aligned, sir? Kasi ito po yung nasa outline po namin po. Well, anyway, we will just proceed with what we prepared. The first one will be tackled by myself, and then later, the last two will be tackled by Sir Paulo Di Maculangan. So, when I prepare this material, I've noticed that some of the things that I will be sharing with you have been lightly discussed earlier by the presenters. But then I will do some sharing as this relates to the government, because my experience really is purely government service, none in the private sector, so that you can also appreciate how these concepts relates to government service. So let me start. Okay, the human resource management process, as said earlier, we begin with our goals and objectives, and with the end point of having some high-performing and competent workers so that we could achieve our goals and objectives. It's still the same thing with the government service. We have our mission and vision, and our end goal is a good level of public service, or let's say an excellent level of public service, which is really hard to achieve when you don't have the competent workforce. So like in all other systems, we begin with planning, and we dwell on planning with the greatest amount of time, because when you have a good plan, it will be easier to execute, and you will be able to anticipate the problems, the issues, and it will be easier to manage them when they come. Course planning. What is really planning now? First, we have our goals and objectives. So we have these goals and objectives so that we can determine our courses of action before we really execute our action. So this planning gives us a sense of purpose and direction. It answers to the questions, what is to be done? That is really our goals and objectives. And how is it to be done? So yun na po yung ating courses of action. So how does this planning apply to human resource management? So we have this HRP, human resource planning. So what is a human resource planning? It is a process of systematically reviewing human resource requirements so that the required number of skilled employees will be available as we need them. So systematic. So that's the keyword. And then the required number of employees. So kailangan natin i-assess ng maigi based on the review. So usually planning starts with a review. So I'd like to share on how the HRP is with the Department of Transportation where I belong. I think this is really the area where I honestly could tell you that we need some improvement because every 6 years we know that we change administration, and sometimes within that administration we also change leaderships within. So it's so hard to implement, to review the human resource requirements because immediately each administration would like to have the action plans right away. So mahirap po siya i-execute, but I think our HR department is now on the process of transforming itself uh, into becoming a very dynamic organization. So they are now looking at competence as a common denominator in executing the functions of our human resource department under our administrative service. But this is easier said than done. Um, every administration will have its own policy with regards to the number of um, employees needed to achieve goals. Like for example, while I was at the planning, our undersecretary would like to have a very lean staff, but the jobs that need to be done is so magnanimous because of the build program. So we end up our technical people being sort of overworked. And in the government, we just cannot raise our compensation because the government is highly supervised by the Civil Service Commission. And that's for the HR policies. And for our compensation, we are under the national government. So we need a legislation to have our compensation or our salaries increased. And so far, since the time of President Ramos, he has really initiated the salary standardization. So that being said, if an employee feels overworked, the authorities can't really just say, oh, okay, I will increase your salary because you're overworked. So we cannot just do that. The HR has to be very creative in compensating the overworked employees, and how to balance the overworked and underworked, or overworked, underpaid employees, and the overpaid and underworked employees. So that's really the challenge of our HRP. I hope that we can partake in the HR policies of our department, because especially the technical people, we have to retain them. Still under planning, okay, these are the factors we need to execute our HRP. We have to consider the macro level factors, which are employment and unemployment situation. So in the government, we have revolutionized in our department. Before, it's so hard to open a position, a permanent position, because our authorities refuse to open them. But now with the build program, we have filled up our permanent positions, and now we are a bigger family. So, but then we still need more employees to fill in the required manpower for all the projects that the DOTR is undertaking. That's why we also have the JO, and that means a job order employees and COS, contract of service employees, although they are considered a no employer and employee relationship, they still contribute to the output of the department. Okay, so we address the unemployment situation in that sense. Then we have the technological changes. I think with the pandemic, the greatest technological change is to the shift of online platforms. We do things differently now under the new normal. So we have to take into account in our HRP these technological changes, and along with that is the organizational changes as well. When I say organizational changes, this is particularly applicable to the government service, because the top level management are usually appointive officials. And then from the middle managers down below, these are mostly the permanent positions. So that the HRP should be able to anticipate changes in the organization, especially in the upper hierarchy. So I'm not really sure how does this apply in the private, but maybe in the private, I would say the permanent positions would be the regular employees, and then the executive officers will be the appointive officers, appointive officials in the government. And then the demographic changes. In the DOTR, the technical people are the aging population. So the HRP should take into account that this aging population needs to be replaced, and the timing of hiring the right people to replace them is very crucial. Plus, we have the gender and development. So we are tasked to consider women to be in key positions, so that we give opportunity both for the men and the women in terms of promotion or in terms of hiring. So this is another dimension that the HRP has to consider. Skill shortages. The very first thing that I can think of a skill shortage, really a a perfect example of a shortage, is that in the aviation sector, we need to have a route plan. For example, Balisin Island. We would like to have a flight from Manila to Balisin, for example. Now, in order to execute that, we need to have a flight plan. Okay. In the Philippines, we only have one expert in that field. So if you're planning to have a more skills on this, as a government, what do you do? Because it's too expensive to hire the same set of skill from outside. I have made a research on my own. It's really costing so many millions, hundreds of millions, if you wish, if you want to, not really hundreds, I mean millions of pesos before you can come up with this flight plan. So when in the department, I think that's one thing that we have to look into in the aviation sector. It is our responsibility to have more skills of this kind, because the aviation industry, especially we are now having the Bulacan Airport and the development of other airports, I think we need to address this skill shortage. So that's on the extreme part, but that's worth sharing because it costs a lot, not only to the government when we need one. We have our CAAP, but then they cannot render service for the private sector. So it has to be a private person or a private company doing this. And then the governmental influences, we know about this. And then the legislative controls, they go hand in hand. whatever is the government or whatever are the legislations being implemented, they will have to be incorporated in our HRP. And then the impact of pressure groups. What are these pressure groups? Usually in the government, we also have our labor union, sort of labor union, but we cannot really say pressure group. We can just negotiate with our authorities. I think the pressure groups here would mean like a labor union in the private sector. So anything that will be organized um, for the benefit or the welfare of the employees will be a great contribution to the HRP or a great input to the HRP. Systems concept and then the lead time. Okay, systems concept. Okay, I think this would pertain to like the systems in place for the human resource. In the department, we have created this HRIS, which I will discuss later. It is a systematic way of getting the information regarding our human resource. Okay, if we have this in place, then we can have a better HRP. The lead time in terms of hiring and promotion would vary from one office to another. But usually in the government, under normal circumstances, it takes quite a lot of time before you can really be hired due to the processes involved. Maybe it takes about from 3 to 6 months, but it will be worth it if you are establishing a career in government. So those are the factors at the macro level. Okay, the steps involved is that we first establish the objectives, of course, and then we have to determine the skills requirement. Then when we are able to evaluate the skills requirement, we then determine if we still need some additional human resource requirements, and then we do an action plan, and then we execute it. So that's the steps involved in the HRP. Still in planning, we have the strategic planning, which is an overall approach and plan that answers the following questions. Who are we? So it is a self-assessment. What capacity do we have? What can we do? So it is still a self-assessment on the in-house capacities, and then we also determine the problems and the way to address them. And then, what is our purpose? What difference do we really want to take? What is our mission? What is our vision? And then if there are any critical issues that we must respond to. And of course, when we have our resources, it's always limited. So how do we allocate them? How do we prioritize our action plan? So this is the general idea of strategic planning. And this is still part of the planning function in the human resource management process. So when we are able to answer these questions, we can do a better action plan. Okay, the HR planning process. So visually, this is how we do it. First, we determine our mission. Sometimes the goals and objectives are included here. Next, we scan. Yun yung sinabi ko po kanina, that we do an internalization, we do an internal assessment, we assess our organizational environment. Then, we set our strategic goals, especially when we are able to determine the gaps. if we need some developmental gaps, then it will be easier for us to develop the strategic goals. We set them. Then we formulate our strategic plan. So these are the action words: determine, scan, set, and formulate. So we start with our mission, goals, and objectives. Then we end up with our strategic plan. Then we redo the cycle because we have to revisit this every now and then. Okay. To facilitate our HRP, we need to have some kind of a HRIS, or the Human Resource Information System. What is this? It is an integrated system designed to improve efficiency with which the HR data is compiled. So it's for the DOTR, pre-pandemic, we created this through the assistance of a consultant. So right now, during the pandemic, we were now required, because of the work from home, to log in our official business OB passes through a system that we also call HRIS. So let me just take you to an example. Okay, this is our HRIS. So this is the front of the dashboard. To your left, this is the home screen. So we have our personal data here. Then we have our schedule. To your left, the schedule is our time entries. So if you are deployed in the site, like in Clark, your time entries will be automatically registered here. And if you're at the work from home, you use this request. So you have to request from your supervisor that your stay at home working for about 8 hours is authorized. So you have to request that. Then we have the list of trainings. By the way, the list of trainings that we have here is only confined within the last 5 years, because that's the time period wherein the knowledge that we get from this training is what we call updated. Then we have the learning and development. This is taken care of by our HR. This is where we have our tools for learning. So that's where we can choose what kind of training that we need, and including seminars and other important meetings, like meetings on international events. Then lastly, right now, this is just the last one, the payroll. So this is where we could see our compensation, and this is the newest in the menu. The entries for this is just for the last year, for the first 6 months only. So this is a continuing project, and it is a very good tool for us to speak in the same language in terms of our data, because all of our data are the same. So it's a good tool for planning. This is how a request data would the request screen would look like. So we have our leave balances. So you will know if you still have enough leave balances, so that you can go on leave, vacation, or sick leave, forced leave, and special privilege leaves. The forced leaves and special privilege leaves do not accumulate, so you have to use them in a year. After that, we go on job analysis. Okay, what is a job analysis? It is the process of studying and understanding jobs, which is a vital part of any HR program. So what are the uses of this? The uses of the job analysis would be for staffing, training and development, compensation and benefits, safety and health, employee and labor relations, and legal considerations. You will see that the job analysis is used in the different parts of the resource management process. Okay, after planning, we go to recruitment and downsizing. These are opposites. Now, recruitment is hiring. Downsizing is that, I don't know if retrenchment is the right word to use, but if during the pandemic, I think many companies have downsized because business is not good during the pandemic. Okay, let's speak about recruitment, which is the process of screening and selecting qualified people for a job at an organization or firm, or for a vacancy in a volunteer-based. Some components of the recruitment process. Mid and large size organization and companies often retain professional recruiters or outsource some of the process to recruitment agencies. So yung sa mga big companies, they can use external companies to hire for them. And then like siguro yung mga trabaho.ph or what, ganun. But in the government, it's always the office who's do the recruitment. And by the way, the Civil Service Commission is our is the authority who issues HR policies, especially on recruitment, on training, on the requirements of personnel, retirement, etc. So whatever is our HR is promulgating, it's always based on the policies promulgated by the Civil Service Commission. So unlike in the private sector, which can really vary from one company to another, in the government, there is a common denominator. We have to follow what the Civil Service Commission is promulgating. We can do some additions with the approval of the civil service, especially during recruitment of highly technical positions. So at the DOTR, we are an infrastructure implementing agency. So the core functions really are with the planning and in the project implementation. So when we require or when we recruit personnel, especially in key positions, we add something. We add some technical descriptions for these core competencies, especially in planning and in project implementation. So that's why when we see in our organizational structure, we see project managers or we see project evaluators who have long been in the government or have long been in the DOTR, because a newbie would find it difficult to execute without the necessary experience for these core competencies. So that's, I think, where the OTR could have a handoff for these core competencies. The other common, like administrative positions, clerical, we can really hire anybody, whether from within the organization or outside the organization. But for the core competencies, I think it's harder for outsiders to be hired due to the technical requirements. And usually during interviews, you can really differentiate the insider from the outsider. So that's kind of um, an authority that each of the office in the national government can have a handoff, because those that were promulgated by the civil service, we cannot do anything about it already. Okay, this is what I'm telling in the recruitment. There's an internal recruitment and external recruitment. Internal recruitment, actually we cannot say that it's an internal recruitment, because when we open a permanent position, it's open for everybody. And we post it at our website, so anybody can apply. However, during the selection, the insiders will have the advantage of, one, next in rank capacity, and number two, the experience, uh, the experience necessary for the position, and especially the technical requirement. So it looks like it's like an internal recruitment, but it's just that the insiders will have those advantage. But it doesn't really mean that it's all the time. It's the insiders who will get the key roles. Sometimes we also get um, from outsiders, especially when they demonstrate a better competency, especially when they're involved in government projects. So that's where the outsiders can have an advantage also. Okay, this is an example of a posting at our DOTR website. Right now we have some openings and there are some salary grades. Okay, these salary grades, these are standardized salary. So the potential applicant or a candidate can look this up in the internet and see what kind of compensation or what level of compensation, and if you think that that's acceptable, then you can always apply. Okay, you can see it's the posting date. It's relatively short. It's open for about 2 weeks, and the requirements are posted there. So baka may interesado po sa inyo. Wala pang 23 January. Oh. There are a lot of positions open, and these are all permanent positions. Mostly permanent positions. Okay, after recruitment and downsizing, we go to selection. Okay, selection is a process of choosing from a group of applicants those individuals best suited for a particular position. So parang self-explanatory na po. But the selection process at the DOTR, it's also based on the civil service. But then the lead time varies because sometimes when we are hiring a volume of applications, it takes long for one to be chosen. And it usually involves one, initial evaluation of your qualifications. If you do not meet the minimum qualification standards, you will be informed that you were not qualified for the position. But if you don't receive anything, that means you're qualified. And then you will have an initial interview. Then you will have the exams. It depends on the position, but usually there is an initial exam and there is a case study, and then we have interview. We can have 2 to 3 interviews, and the final one is the panel interview. And then you will be evaluated, and the selection board will deliberate on the applicants and then decide who will be chosen for the position. That's how it is in the government. I'm not really sure in the private. Maybe it's in a similar form as well, but I think that would be a shorter time. Okay, this is an example of an appointment paper. You will see that the nature of appointment is written, it's original. That means that is your first appointment to a permanent position. And then it is signed by the signing authority. It's usually the secretary of the DOTR, but he can delegate that to an undersecretary or whoever. After selection, we go to orientation. So orientation is the process of acquainting new employees with the organization. So normal naman po siguro ito. But then in my experience before, we do this out of town. The HR would conduct this in 2 days out of town. So it is really an in-depth orientation of the DOTR. But now in the pandemic, we just do it virtually, and it's a shorter period of time, sometimes half day to 1 day. I think that is not just enough. I think the face to face and out of town is a better way to inculcate uh, things about the organization, because until now I could still remember how we were oriented back in the day. So this is something that we could look into in our department when the pandemic ends. After orientation, we have the training and development. This is a briefing document. We have to do training and development over the entire career life of the employees. Okay, training and development refers to the imparting of skills, abilities, and knowledge to an employee. Since in the government, we cannot just increase the compensation. This is one area that is really what I think is a benefit that I think that's unlimited, that you can give to an employee. But the thing is, sometimes when this is not managed well, um, some employees will just go in the department, take a position, and then leave the department because they have already acquired the necessary experience, training and development, and then look for a greener pasture somewhere else. So this is really a challenge for the HR. How do we retain those types of employees? So it's a great question that I think our HR department has yet to focus on the retention of employees, especially those who are those who have technical skills. And just to share with you, in last year, the planning has lost one division chief with a doctor's degree. In my division, in less than 1 year, we have lost four technical people. I think this is one really that our HR department has to pay attention to. Why? Why are people leaving? And these people seem to be in the department for a long time now. So anyway, I could speak about retention for a long period of time because of some frustrations. But anyway, that's not part of my report. Okay, um, this is a listing of a sample listing of a training that's in the HRIS. So if you can see, there are only about how many five training courses that's within the 5-year period. So every one of us has to watch out. I think we are required to have at least one training for every year of service. So that will become our gold standard already. And then the number of hours would be critical, because when you are applying for a promotion, the civil service would require a certain number of hours of training and development. So it's really good to attend capacity building in a year's time. Now, just to prepare for any opportunity for promotion in the future. After training and development, we have performance appraisals. Okay, performance appraisal is a regular review of an employee's job performance and contribution to a company. In the government, at the DOTR, we do this twice a year. So every 6 months, we set our targets. And then after that rating period, we assess our performance. We self-assess. The employees would self-assess, and then this will be elevated to our supervisor, to our immediate authority, and these immediate supervisors will either concur or rebut your rating. So whatever is her rating and your rating will be averaged, and this will be approved by the next higher authority. And then whatever is your rating here will be the basis for your incentive. No, incentive could be like compensation, additional compensation, performance incentive bonus, or incentive for promotion. There will be some points here. If you have a failing mark here, you will not be qualified for promotion. So that's how this is being used. So the HR should needs to have this handy, this information handy, and it is not yet available in our HRIS. So I think that would follow next. So this is an example of our performance evaluation form. On an individual basis, it is called Individual Performance Commitment and Review. So we identify our major final outputs, and we do our success indicators, meaning this is where we put our targets. And then next, we have our accomplishments. And then we will be evaluated based on quantity, quality, and timeliness. There is a system for the scoreboard, which I will not discuss already. So this is how it looks like, and we do this every 6 months. After performance appraisal, we do to compensation and benefits. Okay, compensation is the total of all rewards provided employees in return for their services. Benefits, on the other hand, cover indirect pay such as health insurance. So as I said before, compensation in the government is legislated. So whatever is already there, that's what you get. Plus, if the President of the Philippines at the end of the year, if we have a savings in the government, he has the prerogative of distributing the savings to deserving government employees. So sometimes this can be an additional bonus like anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000. Way back in the time during the time of President GMA, I think she was one of the more generous persons. I think she gave about more than 10,000, like 15 or 17,000. So those are just dependent on the savings of the government. And then these benefits, I know from the private company that the benefits are quite long. Benefits in the DOTR or in the government in general. Okay, wait. Before I go to the benefits, this is a sample of what a government employee gets from his compensation. We have the basic salary, and then the allowance. This is legislated. And then augmentation, that's also based on a enabling act. And then at the end of the year, we have the 13th month bonus and 14th month bonus. So whatever is one government employee, he receives this based on the salary grade. So how do we incentivize government employees? For me personally, one is opportunities for travel. Travel not for leisure. It's travel. It's a business travel. It's an official travel. You travel abroad or travel domestically on official time, meaning hindi ka absent. You will do some official work, and of course, syempre nandun na yung opportunity no na makapagpasyal ka na, etc., etc. So there are so many travel opportunities in the government, and it's up to the authorities on how to use them to retain the employees. That's what I think. Sometimes kasi pagka nagpalit-palit po ng administration, sometimes the travel opportunities just goes to these new temporary employees of the department. Those who are closely associated to the new administration. And sometimes it demoralizes those who really work, those who are in the core functions. those in the support function. So I think travel should be given as an opportunity for everyone who deserves it in the department. It should not just be limited to one. Sometimes isang tao nakaikot na kung saan. Samantalang yung nagtatrabaho, hindi man lang nabibigyan ng opportunity. So I think this is really one way to incentivize government employees. Another is, I mentioned this earlier, collective negotiation agreement. So we form a sort of organization and we forge an agreement with the management and we request additional incentives for the employees. So usually, ang tinatawag po namin dito CNA bonus. So it depends on how the employees perform. Management can always agree to giving out bonus. And then, excuse me po, another thing that's good with the government, in my observation, a lot of people would like to retire in the government because they say that retiring in the government has a better retirement package than with the private counterpart. So I think many could attest to this. Even in the recent, I was given an opportunity to interview. I was in an awkward situation to interview my future boss, and then I asked one question why she chose to shift from the academe to the government. She said she is now in her retirement plans and she would like to retire in the government. And because she is highly qualified, she can take on a higher position in the government. And when she retires, she can have a good retirement package. So yung monthly niya na natatanggap na retirement, she thinks would be enough when she grows old. So parang ganun po, isang motivation ito. Kasi mahal po talaga ang sinisingil ng government, ng GSIS from the government employees. Super mahal po talaga, aangal ka. Liliit yung net pay mo dahil sa GSIS and the tax, income tax. So after compensation and benefits, we go to safety and health. Okay. Safety involves protecting employees from injuries caused by work-related accidents, and health refers to employees' freedom from physical or emotional illness. Okay. Usually, sa government employees po, this is in the form of yung benefits we get from the ECC, Employees Compensation Commission. So, we can have these benefits po kasi, halimbawa na disable ka, you can claim a benefit from there. So, while in the discharge of your official duties, and then, for health naman, we have PhilHealth. But PhilHealth kasi lahat naman meron ito eh. But this is not really enough as a health insurance. That's why part of our negotiation agreement, we can ask the management to have yung HMO package, Health Maintenance Organization. So, malaking bagay po ito sa mga empleyado kasi hindi mo na siya iisipin na kung hindi ka ba magpapa-check up kasi magastos, etc. So pwede kang ma-hospitalize na medyo worry-free ka. Very important to. Ngayon, hindi na po kaya talaga ng government na sagutin ang cost nito. So wait lang po. Ang cost ng HMO. So ang mga empleyado gusto na nila kumuha kahit sa sarili nila para lang ma-cover on any health emergencies. Pero dati talaga, kasama po talaga yan sa collective negotiation agreement. So when we execute all of this, where do we go to kapag successful po lahat ng ating processes dito sa human resource? Dito po tayo mapupunta. We can produce high-performing, competent workers. And when we have this, we can really achieve our goals and objectives. So that's how we strategize. We now go to competency-based human resources management. So this is one way to successfully implement our strategic planning, competency-based. So the key word really is competency. What is it? Competency-based human resources management. It supports the integration of human resources planning with business planning by allowing organizations to assess the current human resource capacity based on their competencies against the capacity needed to achieve the vision, mission, and business goals of the organization. I think this is not only true to the business organization, it is also true in the government service, especially in the government service, because really the asset of the government are the people who are serving the public. If we do not take care of these people, then the level of public service will be affected. So competency-based human resources management applies to all, whether private entity or government organization. Okay, let's talk about competency first. What is competency? It's a combination of skills, job attitude, and knowledge, which is reflective in a job behavior that can be observed, measured, and evaluated. So yung tatlo po, skills, attitude, and knowledge, this is demonstrated into a job behavior and it is observed, measured, and evaluated. So it is a determining factor for successful performance. The focus of competency is behavior, which is an application of skills, job, attitude, and knowledge. What are the components of competency? Okay, so we have knowledge, skill, and attitude. Then the observable behavior. Then we have the competency. This is just a graphical representation of the definition before, but the end result would be job performance. Okay, job description and competency. Job description looks at what, whereas competency model focuses on how. So traditional job description analysis looks at the elements of the jobs and defines the job into sequences of tasks necessary to perform the job. Okay, competency studies the people who do the job well and defines the job in terms of characteristics and behaviors of these people. Types of competency: managerial competency, or what we call the soft competency, and we have the functional competency. Okay, managerial competency, this type of competency relates to the ability to manage job and develop an interaction with other persons. For example, problem solving, leadership, communication, etc. Functional competency, this type of competency relates to the functional capacity of work. It mainly deals with the technical aspect of the job. For example, market research, financial analysis, electrical engineering, and others. Okay, the competency identification process. We start with clarifying the organizational strategy and context. We move to identifying the competencies. This is involved with analyzing the work roles and process. We gather data through behavior event, interview, and focus group discussions. And then we conduct a benchmark study. After that, we generate the competency models. Then we validate, refine, and implement. And the process is repeated as needed. Okay, there is a need for competency framework. Parang ito yung pinaka-foundation natin. Why do we need a competency framework? To have a common understanding of critical success indicators and desired behaviors within an organization. And then the integration of organization process to competencies helps the interpretation of big picture concerns in day-to-day working. And then there is a better management and effective decisions regarding cost-intensive processes like selection, hiring, and promotions. And then assessment, feedback, and communication regarding performance becomes standardized, thus facilitating a common culture. So the key word here is standardization. Okay, the competency framework is essentially a structured process to help HR staff develop their skills. A framework not only outlines specifically what HR staff members need to do to be effective in their roles, but also clearly shows how roles within HR relate to long-term business goals and success. Okay, steps involved. If we are able to answer these questions, then we can already establish our competency framework. Okay, what are the objectives? Ulit-ulit na lang. How will it be used? We define the format, scope, structure. We establish our project team. For the government, this is very important, project team. You plan your communication, you gather competency data, we can use the HRRS. Then we assemble the draft framework. We gather feedback so that we can hone the framework. And then we test the framework and prepare to roll out. Okay, the competency-based people strategy. Okay, how do we apply this? This is a visual representation on the competent-based strategy. Okay, we start, of course, with the business strategy, or in the government, we say our goal, our mission, our objectives. Then we go to the processes where we use competency. Okay, first, in the recruitment and selection. So, as I said earlier, the basic competencies are dictated by the Civil Service Commission. And then the additional competencies needed will be dictated by the office itself. Training and development. In training and development, we are now into job profiling. So we determine the competencies individually and then the consolidated competency per division so that the training and development needed for each unit will be properly determined and properly addressed. Then performance management. Of course, this is part of the evaluation. Yun na pong nabanggit ko kanina na IPCR. That's how we do our competency-based performance management. Reward management. So based on the performance management, we have our reward management. So it's just logical that we do the competence-based rewards management based on the competence-based performance management. Then career management. I think this has something to do with the retention, and this is something that we have yet to focus on. So if we can do all of this competency-based strategy, then I think there's no reason for us to achieve the business results that we desire. Therefore, the competency framework will be the basis for all HR functions and serve as the linkage between individual performance and business results. So nasa dulo na po ako. Ito lang po yung mga actual na ginagawa namin sa DOTR. We started for competency-based HR management, we started with job profiling. And as you can see, this job profiling will be able to address, because the primary goal of the DOTR competency framework is to integrate this structure to the 4 pillars of the human resource systems. Yung 4 pillars identified is that 1, recruitment, selection, and placement. Number 2, learning and development. Number 3, performance management. And number 4, rewards and recognition. So wala po dito yung sinasabi ko kanina na about retention, kasi yun pa lang po ang kailangan namin i-address. So, at saka hindi naman siya kailangan publicized. Okay, this is an example on, Google form siya po eh. So, ititik-tik mo lang yan. Yan. Division functional competencies. Ito yung description ng level when you fill out the competency form. What is level 1, what is level 2, level 3, and level 4. So itatali yan ng aming HR department so that they could determine the level of competency for the individual and of the division. So still the same, ganyan po ang form namin. So ito po ang mga headings: general competencies, leadership competencies, and core competencies. So may mga kanya-kanya po silang questions, and then you have to evaluate yourself honestly as regards your competency. So it took a while for the HR department to gather the data and formulate this. And then sometimes, right now, we also have external help. We have the Australian aid. They are also conducting an organizational training needs assessment. Ito po more on the pandemic. So they are also assessing our competencies during response during pandemic pala. Response during pandemic. Okay, so they have also have their scale measurement. And then Google form pa din. Technical functional competency. Okay. For the DOTR, this is the last na po. We have our DOTR Learning Development System. This is published in our website. And you can see that there is the competency-based management. So anybody can visit this. We have this dashboard. Just run through them. So ganun pa din, we have the categories: leadership competencies, functional or technical competencies, and the core competencies. So this one, we have a new task. CERT PH. Yung CERT po, ibig sabihin Computer Emergency Response System. So this is headed by, our CERT PH is headed by the DICT. And then nag-form po sila ng subgroups. So the DOTR is the lead for the transport CERT. So ito po yung new task namin. We have to create a team for this. And it's quite a big responsibility because this is regarding cybersecurity. So initially we're doing this, but we are going to revise this one. It's so hard because we are not HR people, but our boss is pressuring us to come up with an organizational structure. So this is one sad thing because I think our HR needs to be on board. So, ito na po yung sinasabi na in practice, mahirap po talaga ang HRP kasi it's largely dictated by authorities. Sometimes, they do not really practice what should be done for the department. Basta gusto lang nila po ma-execute lang. So, it's really something that we have to address, and it's so hard because it's our authorities. So, that's it. I hope you learned something from our presentation. So this is the end, and Sir Paulo po would follow. Thank you po.
Thank you very much, Madam.